Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we explain the controversy around a US warship passing through Indian territory. We also discuss the disappearance of 7 coastal villages in Odisha. But first, we talk about the Cooch Behar poll violence. The ongoing West Bengal assembly elections have been the most heated and divisive ones this poll season. And things on Saturday turned violent when 4 persons, including an 18-year-old, were killed in firing by the CISF personnel. This happened at a polling station in Shitalkuchi in Cooch Behar district, where voting was taking place as part of the 4th phase election in Bengal. It was here that the CISF, that is the Central Industrial Security Force, was manning the poll booth. This incident comes at a time when Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, the leader of the Trinamool Congress, has been accusing the central forces of working on the behest of the central government and the BJP. In this segment, Ravik Bhattacharya, who writes on West Bengal politics for the Indian Express, joins us on a call from Cooch Behar to talk about what happened during the incident.
See, the incident took place in Jot Patki village under Shitalkuchi assembly seat in Cooch Behar district. We went to the village. Whatever we could find is that till 9:30 everything was fine. Polling was brisk. It was going on a normal way. Now there are two versions. Villagers are saying that after 9:30, a QRT, Quick Response Team of CISF, came near the booth and they beat up a 14-year-old boy. Then they took him away. Now, according to police officials, both the SP and the DIG of Jalpaiguri range we spoke with, they said that the boy was actually sick. He felt sick. He was unconscious near the polling booth, and the QRT team helped that boy basically to know how they are or not, and they asked the police to take him to the hospital, and this boy, according to the police official, was recovering well. But what happened is that after the boy was taken to the hospital, there was this rumor in the village that the central forces have shot dead a young boy. The boy is around 13, 14 years old. This sparked a problem there. Over 300 or 400 villagers, they ghear out the police station. They were pushing and shoving the security personnel, CISF Jawans there. Now the CISF Jawans, they called in reinforcement. They called up the QRT and they called in reinforcement. When reinforcements arrived, it took a bad turn as it was almost, both parties almost came to blows. It was at that time when the CISF Jawans decided to fire, when the crowd was actually trying to get inside the polling booth and damage the EVM, beat up some polling personnel. At that point, CISF fired, and according to the CISF report, they were also trying to snatch their weapons. Both the SP and the DIG also corroborated. They told us that there was this incident that during this fisticuffs and when this pushing and shoving going on, they actually tried to snatch the rifles of the CISF personnel. Then the CISF personnel fired rounds, and 4 people died on the spot. 4 others got injured.
Right, and these 4 people who were injured, how are they doing now?
They're stable. Out of the 4, 1 has a bullet injury in his thigh. The other 3 have normal injuries, non-bullet injuries.
And what do we know about the people who were killed? Could you talk a bit about them?
See, out of this 4, 3 are migrant laborers. 2 of them worked in Sikkim and returned to their home just 2 days back to cast their vote. The third migrant laborer actually used to work in Sikkim, but now he works as a helper to a mason, all daily wage earners, in Mathabhanga, which is near Shitalkuchi. The 4th victim is a young boy who used to run a cyber cafe in that village. He was quite popular because he used to get all these printouts and everything, all applications to be done. So these are the profiles of the 4 people. One of them has a baby girl who's just more than a year old. Another has a 3-year-old girl. So that is the profile. They are all from BP. They're poor people who basically these were the prime breadwinners for their families. So that is what we know about these people right now.
And what kind of action did the Election Commission take after this incident happened?
The Election Commission sought a report from the SP and DM of the district, the election commission sent a team to look into actually what happened. And the report is yet to be made published. I think CISF is also filing a report to the election commission of what happened. CISF also lodged an FIR today regarding that incident. A separate FIR have been lodged by the police also regarding the incident. Then thereafter, when Mamata Banerjee announced that she's going to come and visit the families today, Election Commission actually barred entry of political personalities from outside for the next 3 days, for 72 hours. So that is what the Election Commission did so far.
And what has been the political reaction to this entire thing?
Political reaction was for Mamata Banerjee, she demanded the resignation of Union Home Minister Amit Shah because she has been saying over the campaign period that central forces have been doing excesses. They are actually taking sides of BJP, and Amit Shah is, because of the Union Home Minister, he is running the show. So she was the first one to, run a public meeting just after the incident. She said that Amit Shah should immediately resign, and there's a conspiracy behind this. And according to her, innocent people were standing in a queue to cast their votes when they were shot. She questioned that why there are no videos of the villagers trying to snatch rifles. Why are there no pictures of there was a scuffle or there was an attack on the polling station? She questioned the motives of both EC as well as the central paramilitary forces, though she said that I trust the paramilitary forces, but they've been run by Amit Shah.
In fact, a day after the incident, Mamata Banerjee said that what happened was a genocide conducted by the CISF personnel.
I said genocide because I don't think genocide happened. This is also genocide. When you fired, the upper side, and without giving any alert, any alarming, any red alert or anything, or you didn't try if there is anything. Nothing is there. It was peaceful, just both him.
She also said that people were shot in the chest. If the intention of the CISF was to disperse the mob, they could have fired at the legs of the people. Ravik now tells us how the BJP has reacted to the situation, starting from what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said.
Narendra Modi yesterday in a Siliguri meeting, the Prime Minister said that TMC he condemned the incident and it's a sad incident, that's what he said. But side by side, he said that over the campaign period, Mamata Banerjee has been asking or instigating villagers to gherav the central forces. Mamata Banerjee speaking against the central forces. In a way, she was trying to instigate people against the central forces.
Talking along similar lines, yesterday, Home Minister Amit Shah, while rallying in West Bengal, said that Mamata Banerjee's advice to gherao central forces instigated people to attack CISF personnel.
ममता दीदी ने कुछ ही दिन पहले भाषण किया था कि CISF CAPF वाले आए तो उनको घेर लो, उन पर हमला करो। मैं पूछना चाहता हूं ममता दीदी को, एक शार्प सवाल पूछना चाहता हूं कि क्या आपका वो भाषण वो 4 लोगों के मृत्यु के लिए जिम्मेदार नहीं है क्या?
So the political reactions were sharply different, and on Sunday, Trinamool Congress has planned to observe a black day throughout Bengal, Kala Divas. There will be rallies, public meetings, group meetings, where Trinamool Congress leaders across the state will observe this day as a black day. And Mamata Banerjee held a press conference this morning on Sunday, and after that she held a video conferencing with the family members of the 4 youths who were killed. She assured them all kinds of help, financially and otherwise. She said that the Trinamool Congress party as well as the government will stand with them, help them out. She also stated that after 72 hours, she will visit the village. Apart from that, she once again targeted Indian Home Minister for the conspiracy and Election Commission for creating an atmosphere where people cannot vote peacefully.
And Ravik, you're there in Cooch Behar at the moment. How are things there right now?
Cooch Behar is basically quite tense right now after the incident yesterday. But since polls are over, central forces are still there. So there is a little chance of violence to spread throughout the district. But when given the character of Bengal, you never know. But at this moment, Cooch Behar is there's no news of any fresh violence in this district. Polls are over, and then it is like this at presently in Cooch Behar.
Next, we talk about the controversy between the Indian and the US Navy. Last week, a US Navy ship named USS John Paul Jones passed through Indian territory west of the Lakshadweep Islands. It was passing through India's exclusive economic zone. And although the US has done so in the past, this time it issued a statement saying that it did so without requesting India's prior consent, and which it claimed is consistent with international law, essentially saying that the US doesn't need India's permission to pass through its exclusive economic zone. This statement caused a controversy, and India protested this decision by the US. This controversy has raised eyebrows because it comes at a time when there are growing ties between the armed forces of the two countries. In this segment, we talk to Krishn Kaushik, who reports on matters of defense for the paper, about this controversy.
So what happened on 7th April is this US warship, it passed about 130 nautical miles from the coast of Lakshadweep, which is of course Indian territory.
This territory that it passed through is what is India's exclusive economic zone, or EEZ. Krishn explains what that is.
Now, the EEZ, according to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is the international maritime law which most countries adhere to, and EEZ is an area beyond and adjacent to the territorial sea, subject to the specific legal regime for every nation. And it says that the rights and jurisdiction of the coastal state for which it is the EEZ and the rights and freedoms of other states are governed by the relevant provisions of this convention. So basically, UN clause says that EEZ is the area where a particular coastal state has exclusive economic activity zone over there.
And the EEZ is much larger in area compared to territorial waters, the rules and norms for which are much different. Krishn explains that under the Indian law, the limit of the territorial waters is a line every point of which is a distance of only 12 nautical miles.
So that's the territorial waters. While the EEZ is an area beyond and adjacent to the territorial waters, and the limit of such zone is 200 nautical miles from the baseline.
So 200 nautical miles from the coastline is where the exclusive economic zone lies. And the US warship in question was very much within this area, at around 130 nautical miles, like Krishn mentioned earlier.
According to the Indian laws, India retains the sovereign rights for the purposes of exploration, exploitation, conservation, and management of all natural resources in this area. So basically, this is the area where each nation has exclusive economic rights, that they are the only ones who can conduct economic activity like exploration or exploitation of the natural resources for this particular region.
Now, while the US warship John Paul Jones was not doing any of this, it was, however, passing through this area and conducting what was called Freedom of Navigation Operations, also called FONOPs. Krishn tells us about it.
So, since 1979, they started this program which is called the Freedom of Navigation Operations. The program is called FONOP, FONOP. So, these FONOP operations started in 1979. They claim that certain countries, and they say including India, has excessive maritime claims. And according to international law, according to this US Navy, there's no restriction on an innocent passage of either a commercial or a military ship from the exclusive economic zone of any nation. Of course, they're not entering the territorial waters, but US says that these FONOP operations are basically just innocent passages conducted by the US Navy around a particular coastal state. According to the US Department of Defense, the FONOP operation has existed for over 40 years, and continuously it has reaffirmed the United States policy of exercising and asserting its navigation and overflight rights and freedoms around the world. So they basically claim that India is among the countries who has an excessive maritime claim, trying to prevent other militaries or other commercial ships from passing through these 200 nautical mile zone, which is the EEZ, while there is no such prohibition as per the international law. That's what the US Navy says. And it says this assertion or this operation to pass through without seeking prior consent or without even informing the particular nation, in this case India, that they're only passing through, innocent passage, let me tell you, through these waters, is just it asserting its rights that we have navigation rights in this area as per international law.
This is what the US's statement mentioned as well. It essentially claimed that India requiring permission to pass through its EEZ is inconsistent with international law. And Krishn says that the thing to note is that the US has in fact been conducting these operations since 1979.
And it has conducted such operations in India for years altogether. And earlier, these were registered in the FONOP annual report of the US Department of Defense. They would find a mention that the US Navy conducted these operations in these many countries in a given year. And in that, they would mention India as well. This is the first time, I think starting late last year, the US seems to have changed its standard operating procedure. And after every FONOP that it conducts, it puts out a statement. This is the first time that they have put out a statement after conducting a FONOP within the Indian territory. Now, India and US have increasing bilateral and defense ties. The defense cooperation is going. Both are members of the Quad. Just earlier this month, they conducted a joint maritime exercise along with the other members of the Quad and the French Navy.
Quad, that Krishn mentions here, is the informal strategic grouping between India, Australia, US, and Japan. And what concerns this grouping is the freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific region.
In November, all the members of the Quad had conducted a massive wargaming exercise called Malabar in both Arabian Sea and in Bay of Bengal. So during such time, a statement from the US Navy, its 7th Fleet, claiming that they have asserted their rights and they are countering India's excessive maritime claims. It leaves a little sour taste in the mouth of India, essentially, which is why India reacted, to be honest. India has not reacted to these FONOP operations earlier, but the statement was a little embarrassing, which is why India reacted and said that the convention, which is a UN clause, does not authorize other states to carry out in the exclusive economic zone and on the continental shelf military exercises or maneuvers, in particular those involving the use of weapons or explosives without the consent of the coastal state.
And this, of course, also applies to the Indian laws regarding territorial waters, like we mentioned earlier.
They say that any military ship passing through this area has to inform India before passing through even the exclusive economic zone. So that's what India has protested. However, while the US Navy, the 7th Fleet statement, it did not mention innocent passage in the statement that they gave for India. The same day they passed through Maldives, the previous day, actually 3 days earlier, they passed through Sri Lanka's EEZ as well. Over there, they mentioned innocent passage. So while innocent passage is allowed under law, and that is what seems to have happened over here as well, but India says that we should have been informed at least. And that's what the FONOP operations have been contesting for all these years. Now, just to let you know what innocent passage is, according to India's 1976 Act, a passage is innocent so long as it is not prejudicial to the peace, good order, or security of India. Now, conducting military exercises is a totally different concept altogether. For that, of course, you will need India's consent. India, however, does allow innocent passage, but it says any military ship doing that should inform India first.
Krishn says that now the two countries are trying to salvage the situation, and both have issued public statements regarding this matter.
The public statements are a little more aggressive than what both countries would have wanted, essentially. The bilateral ties are actually at a very, very good state right now. So while India has conveyed its concerns to the US about this statement, US domestically, they have mentioned that, again, it was just an innocent passage, and this is part of standard operating procedure now to list out wherever they have conducted such an operation. Now it's just, the two sides are discussing, how just to move forward from here and just to put this behind them.
And in the end, we talk about Odisha. The state for a while now has been struggling with the problem of coastal erosion. So much so that some villages along the coast have almost disappeared. This is what happened to Sadbhaya, a cluster of villages in the Kendrapara district of the state. There, over 700 families have been displaced because of it. In this segment, we talk to Aishwarya Mohanty, who reports on Odisha for the newspaper about Sadbhaya.
So Sadbhaya was a cluster of 7 villages. Sadbhaya was one of them, and these villages lie in Kendrapada district, which has majority of the coastal belt in Odisha. And the resettlement of the entire village was actually triggered by massive coastal erosion, which the villagers have witnessed since the last 1 decade and more. And so there were around 700 families living in these cluster of villages. Back in 2000, they decided to rehabilitate these families because the sea has been coming closer. And now most of these families are rehabilitated to another colony, which is 12 kilometers away. Now, there was a research by National Center for Coastal Research in Chennai, which has said that Odisha has lost almost 28% of its coastline between 1999 and 2016. And this is almost 153.8 kilometers of the coastline out of the 485-kilometer coastline in the state. And the problem is not only in Sadbhaya, not only in Kendrapada, there are other districts like Ganjam and Puri, where also we have now been witnessing similar issues of coastal erosion, where the sea is now inching closer, and by that, the soil, which was once very fertile and people could farm on it, now has become saline. So people cannot grow anything there. And now it looks more of a desert. It feels more of a desert because there are no houses, there are no plantations. Once the place, which was very rich with its vegetation, now you can mostly see cactus growing and just some coconut trees here and there. And this is the reason, the loss of livelihood, the fact that their houses were getting submerged because the sea was coming so closer that people had to leave and the entire resettlement happened.
And what do experts have to say about the major factors that contribute to coastal erosion in the state?
Right. So again, these factors are broadly categorized into two. One is, of course, natural, and the other is anthropogenic. And so natural, because Odisha is prone to cyclones, the fact that these coastal areas are on the Bay of Bengal coast, so it's very prone to cyclones. And in the 20th century itself, the state has experienced 23 large cyclones. And because of these cyclones, when we have the high wind along with the cyclones, the high wind speed actually increases a wave dash along the coast, which affects the vegetation, which affects the houses on the coast. And the vegetation, which is very crucial to kind of prevent erosion, because when there are a lot of trees, or when there are a lot of, the entire vegetation patch prevents erosion. But because of these cyclones, the vegetation is also under severe threat, and because of which the erosion increases. Now, when we talk about human activities such as developmental activities, which disturb the equilibrium of sediment transport when the sea comes closer. So this could be anything. The development activities could even be close to a river bank, actually, on the embankment, or on the coast itself, developing a tourist spot, or, bringing in new innovations, which actually affects the sea waves, which actually affects the speed and velocity of the sea waves coming towards the coast. And eventually the sea inches closer further and further.
Right. And you mentioned that in Sadbhaya, some 700 families were displaced and many rehabilitated. Could you talk about the state's efforts in trying to do that?
Yes. So in 2000, when the state realized that these people are facing problem and they have been shifting themselves from one place to another because of the cyclones, because of the erosion, Naveen Patnaik laid down a foundation for this colony, which is almost 12 kilometers away from Sadbhaya. And so that from Sadbhaya, you actually have this very narrow road where you can only drive a two-wheeler or a cycle, no four-wheelers can go. And it's very rocky and patchy, and you cannot commute on that road during monsoons. So first you have to take that route, which is almost 5 to 6 kilometers. And then there's a small creek and it's full of crocodiles, because this place is very close to the Bhitarkanika crocodile reserve. So you have to cross that by boat, and then you have to take another road, which is again 5 to 6 kilometers to reach Bhagpatya. So that foundation stone was laid down in 2000, but the resettlement happened only in 2018. And of the nearly 700 families, 571 were rehabilitated in 2018. But there were some issues with the documents, because of which 118 families were given approval very recently. And there are another 40 families or so who are still waiting, and they are yet to be rehabilitated to this new colony in Bhagpatya. So apart from this, close to Sadbhaya, there's another area called Penta, which where again they had started seeing the effect of coastal erosion. And there they tried something different. There actually they have built a geosynthetic seawall. So the World Bank had funded this project to build a geosynthetic seawall to stop erosion. So far, it has actually been fruitful. The exercise has been fruitful, and people have not experienced the sea coming any closer. So this is another thing which they did. This Penta village is around 15 kilometers away from Satbhaya, but on the same coast.
And you spoke to some people in the region. How hard is it for them to find a livelihood, a vocation after they've been rehabilitated?
Yeah, so this has been a major challenge for all the families who have moved Bhagpatya or even elsewhere. Like for the families who haven't been rehabilitated, they have moved to other villages and are now staying on rent, or some families have decided to stay back in Sadbhaya itself. So in Sadbhaya, like I said, that for generations, families dependent on fishing and farming as their major source of occupation. They grew paddy, they had 3 acres and 4 acres of land. But now all of that land is under sand. It's completely infertile and you cannot grow anything, any crop on that land anymore. But yeah, Bhagpatya is a complete contrast to what Sadbhaya was. Bhagpatya is a complete concrete colony. It's just houses and nothing else. There's no green patch or there's no place to farm or grow anything. So for most of the people who have now been rehabilitated, chose to migrate. So they go to Gujarat or Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra for work. And for the young generation specifically, it has been a migration, complete migration. And all the men tend to go out for work and the families stay back.
And is there anyone who still lives in Sadbhaya now?
Yes. So a couple of men have decided to stay back because so their families are now staying on rent or elsewhere. They are yet to be rehabilitated to a new place. And these men decided to stay back and live in Sadbhaya itself because they thought that they can still fish and earn a living through that. There's one particular family, it's an old man and an old woman who decided to stay here because the man says that it's difficult for me to keep moving houses at this certain age. And I cannot migrate to another place to earn a living or do something now. Like he's almost 60. So he says that he decided to stay there with his wife and live there. And he seldom goes and fishes from the sea, and that's what they feed on. And he takes this arduous journey of traveling from here to Bhagpatya every month to bring back ration. He doesn't even have a vehicle or anything. He either hitchhikes a bit or walks the entire route to bring the rice that he's entitled to under the PDS scheme. And that's what he feeds on. And when he goes, he also ensures that, he fishes from the sea and then he takes it, sells it to the people there and bring back some money home. So there are just a handful of people who have decided to stay back, but they have decided to stay back.
You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.